Welcome to Yoga Bubble. So, our episode today will be in English at the request of our guest. And our guest today is IKYA. IKYA, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And the topic for our conversation today is going to be trust.
I think that's an excellent topic. It's actually one of my favorites because there's so much to unpack and there are so many misunderstandings. So fire away.
Yeah, and there's so many levels to it somehow.
Mhm.
Just trusting in yourself, trusting in others, and maybe trusting in something like a God or the divine. There's different types of trust, and trusting in politicians, trusting in media, trusting in gurus like you know.
Mhm.
So I think I hope it will be an interesting episode.
Mhm.
Would you like to introduce yourself for anyone who doesn't know who you are?
I'm a spiritual teacher, and I often refer to myself as an unteacher. My job is mostly to help individuals to peel off everything they've been taught. Because as a spirit, as Atma, as soul, we are what we are. It's everything that we've learned that represents the problem. We have to peel away all those layers. So I try to teach more efficient ways of doing it without dogma, without belief, and definitely without trust. Trust is a big misunderstanding and a huge illusion. We don't need any trust at all, ever.
Well, that is an interesting start for our conversation about trust.
I know.
So, you're saying we don't need trust at all?
No. Okay,
Ah.
trust is basically you denouncing your own responsibility. It's basically you saying, now I have made a rule and I want you to behave this way, and if you don't, I'm a victim. It's a complete power game. So it makes you feel good because you're in control, because now I trust you, so I have the power to make you do what I want to, and that feels good. But if you break my trust, I'm a victim. So basically you have power but not the responsibility. Spiritual awakening is the opposite of trust. Trust is for children. It is for those who are spiritually asleep. When you wake up spiritually, you recognize that you have 100% responsibility at all times for absolutely everything. And trust gets in the way of that because it's just part of the ego games.
So, but
Short episode today.
That's all for today.
that turns things upside down.
Yes, it does.
So, but I've seen one of your videos about trust
Yeah.
On your YouTube channel.
Yeah.
And in that video, it seems like you're talking about two different types of trust.
Yes.
Would you like to expand on that a little bit?
Okay. Now, the power game one, which is the one people think of as trust, is that. The other type is surrender, which is unconditional. And this actually without trust, but it's often what people aspire to when we talk about trust, when we talk about divine trust, for instance. But when you trust God, it's an attempt at controlling the divine. I am then projecting my own belief system, and I want that to be true. That is what you do when you trust in the divine. And surrender has no trust. It is unconditional. It's basically you recognizing that whatever I believe, whatever I think, my definitions and my sense of reality is never what reality is. So I have to leave that behind. I have to move beyond that unconditionally. So surrender is, number one, understanding that whatever I think I understand or believe, it's not sufficient. It's not what reality is. I choose to go beyond that and let go of my own version. Trust is trying to project that version onto the divine and say, it has to be this, because how else can I trust it? Right? So the true type of trust is actually the opposite of trust, because surrender is unconditional and trust is always conditional.
So there's a couple of things coming to me, like letting go. This is something you hear now and then, people saying you have to let go.
Yeah.
Maybe letting go of your ego. And
It doesn't mean that it will disappear.
no, but somehow letting go of letting the ego be in charge, maybe.
Yeah, you can't let go, and it will not happen simply because you let go.
No. So, but in order to let go, you have, like, at least the ego has to trust something.
Not at all. That's how you are not able to let go, because trust is what makes you hold on to, because it's conditional. I need things to be a certain way, and then I can let go. That's not letting go. It's just finding a new strategy to hold on and to be in control. It strengthens the ego. And this is what we also discover as we grow spiritually, that the ego is simply changed strategies. It will be the same. It will just find smarter ways to operate because we get smarter. And it's just that the ego will grow with you. The ego is never a problem. Because when you are in balance, your ego will be in balance. Your ego will only be active where you are in imbalance. So it's an indication of your illusions and your attachments and your needs and your stories and everything belonging to the self. So without the ego, we have no ability to navigate, because the ego will show us all illusions that we are can both within and operate within. So it's just an indication and a perspective. So the ego will grow as our consciousness expands. But as we learn how to maintain balance, how to relate to what is real, the ego goes from being kind of a wild, dangerous animal to being a rug on the floor. It will just be in harmony, but it then offers you the perspective of the kind of subjective reality, which is very important because you're here also to study through yourself as an individual. And the ego can help you do that. But we're so used to in our civilization that the ego is in imbalance. It's basically ill. It's sick as all of that because we are completely out of whack. And then we think the ego is a problem. It's basically when you drive a car and you have multiple lights going off on the dashboard, that's the ego. It's an indication that you are out of balance. And of course, the solution is not to tape over the red lights and then the car is fixed, which is often what we try to do in spirituality when dealing with the ego. So we need to love the ego and see it as the most important instrument we have in order to achieve balance.
So I don't think I completely understand the word surrender anymore.
Good.
Surrender to what?
You can never understand what you surrender to, otherwise it's not surrender. The thing is, the moment you have defined someone, it's already corrupted because it's part of your mind. And it means then it's part of the projection that you're creating in your own mind, which is never what reality is. So you can only surrender to what you don't understand, because that is what's beyond the wall of your own mind, and you can't know. That's why it's surrender. And it's how we can accelerate our expansion, because it's the acknowledgement, yes, there is something beyond the wall of my own mind. I have no idea what that is. I can't define it. I haven't experienced it yet. But through surrender, I go in there and I let go of my kind of definition complex. So I can move into that space and let it define itself and let it appear to me as it is instead of me trying to define it. Often what we try to do is be within the space of our own mind so that we pull things in, right? And it means we stay within our own minds. In all spiritual traditions, the big experiment has always been how to go beyond the wall of our own minds and our own egos. And it's not actually that difficult. But how to get there is extremely challenging. And this is why most people are not able to do it.
What do you mean by it's not difficult but extremely challenging? Or did I misunderstand?
Yeah, because it's recognizing that whenever you can experience it, it's not true anymore. You have to go beyond the concept of you.
Also the concept of experience?
Absolutely. Truth cannot be experienced. Because the moment you experience, it's already part of the subjective reality. This is why in many spiritual traditions one will refer to the nothingness. It's actually not nothingness. It's the allness.
It's the what?
It's the allness. So it's absolutely everything. But the moment you define it, you've already filtered out 99.99999% of it. And what you're left with is what is in harmony with your own bias.
Would you say that experiencing it is the same as defining it?
Absolutely. You can't experience something until you have defined it. Because an experience is something that is happening in you, and your brain is filtering out whatever is not consistent with what it already knows. And remember that the brain will use a fraction of a second to render an experience in your brain. So what you perceive as this is not real. It's based on what your senses take in, which is a fraction of what is actually here. And then your brain will stitch that together and render it into then an experience. So you do not experience what is there. You are experiencing what your brain has rendered. So you're not looking outside yourself. Your brain is creating the illusion of you experiencing this, when it's actually something that's happening in your brain a fraction of a second after what's taking place.
So how would you then differentiate between like an objective reality, which it sounds like you're talking about an objective reality here. So what you're experiencing is not objective truth.
It can't be.
So what about subjective truth? What are your thoughts on this?
Yes,
reality?
this is the challenge also when we talk about spiritual concept, because especially the Western languages are not very suited for spiritual discourse. If we say that there is one reality and the rest is misunderstanding. So the moment you experience something, it's already a misunderstanding, because it's limited to where you are standing. It's limited to your life form, your biology, your experiences, your bias. And then what's left will be what you experience and think is objective. There's no way past it as long as you are an individual. This is the process in all advanced spiritual traditions, is how do we go beyond this, right? And trust has never been part of it. It's leaving behind all of those childish concepts and go beyond. So for many, I've seen in most traditions, the concept of enlightenment is connected to when someone is able to kind of crack that kind of eggshell and move beyond that wall. To me, that's just, the beginning of the journey. It's not the end of it.